which singer accused modern pop stars of being overtly sexual? No, it wasn't Sir Cliff, it was Debbie Harry.
You're watching Wednesday's Right Stuff with me, Nihal, standing in for Matthew Wright this week. Alongside me are Steve First, Natalie Pinkham and special guest Louise Winner. Who'll have the rest of today's headlines for you shortly. But first, is pop mogul Mike Stock right to worry that today's pop stars are too raunchy? Right Stuff at 5.tv is the place for your thoughts on that. You can email us and Kirsty will read some out later. As a producer, Mike Stock ruled the airwaves in the 90s, 80s as one-third of Stock, Aitken and Waterman. But songwriter and producer Mike Stock won't be rushing to buy any of today's chart hits. The man who gave us Kylie Minogue and Rick Astley says modern music is just far too sexy. 99%, he believes, of the charts is just soft porn. And all those raunchy videos force kids to grow up too quickly. Does he have a point? Lady Gaga suggesting she'd like to go for a ride on a disco stick is a long way... What a child line that would be. Is a long way, of course, from the Beatles wanting to just simply hold your hand, isn't it? Should parents be... Yeah, the lovely days, weren't they? They were the better days, weren't they, eh? Oh, yeah, they were lovely then, weren't they, eh? Yeah, before electricity and stuff. Anyway, should parents be covering their kids' eyes and ears when the likes of Gaga or the Pussycat Dolls or even Rihanna are on TV or the radio? Are pop songs really forcing kids to think about sex before they're ready to do so? Or are we reading just a little bit too much into this? Louise, your band, Sleeper, was around at a time of bands like the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
And you, of course, were a pin-up, weren't you? And did you find that... yeah, you were. I mean, good grief, you know, loads of NME readers certainly found you a bit of a pin-up. Uncomfortable, was it?
Do you know what? I mean, it was a bit, but it was different. We all just sort of dressed like boys in those days. We had the big boots, short hair, or leather jackets. We were sort of a bit rough and tough. But I think Debbie Harry's right, actually. I think the thing about all this women in pop today, it's really sort of sold as being sort of liberated, isn't it? This kind of being sort of really overt with sort of female sexuality. But to me, it's a really sort of cliched version of what female sexuality is. They look like pole dancers, they look like Playboy bunnies. I just don't think that... I don't feel like we've sort of come forward in the way that sort of women represent themselves in pop.
Is it not sexual empowerment?
No, but these women are supposed to be trailblazers, and if anything, they're taking the women's movement back.
I agree, I think it's...
Because they're just taking us back to being sexual objects.
So when you think of female trailblazers, you think of Pussycat Dolls? You think that they're meant to, that anyone thinks of them as female trailblazers?
That's what they put themselves up to be.
Do they
There was a
really?
time when it was just Madonna really kind of pushing the boundaries. Now everybody's doing it.
Madonna was so sexual.
Huh?
Madonna was so sexual.
But so are these. They're all trying to outdo each other.
But what he's saying
is... make allowances if someone's really talented and a bit of a maverick, like Madonna or Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. No, but you do if they're really pushing the boundaries and they are kind of taking control of their own career a little bit more than a manufactured band like the Pussycat Dolls. Suddenly,
Lady Gaga isn't manufactured. She writes her own material.
That's what I'm saying. That she is like the Madonna of her time. So
I
people,
love her quirkiness.
so people like, oh yeah, we love her quirkiness, but yeah, her videos are hardly kind of puritanical and a bit Victorian.
No.
They're very, very sexual.
The one at the telephone one, when she like thrusts up against the bars.
But to me, there's no difference between that or a Pussycat Dolls video. But yet you're allowed to like that, and that's not.
No, I only like elements of what Gaga does. It's what gets me is the fact they all try and outdo each other. Miley Cyrus was this wholesome Hannah Montana character. Then suddenly she makes this huge leap. Are all her young fans supposed to do the same? Suddenly make this leap from being this wholesome young kid who looks very pretty to suddenly the girl next door to being overtly sexual.
And more. I mean, but not everybody is doing it. You also live in a culture now, thankfully, where acts like Bublé.
Yeah, but there's Laura Marlin, Ellie Goulding.
There are people who do go, you know, who are kind of slightly more folk-inspired acts. I mean, there are people that are, thankfully, not just being lost in a sea of kind of porn.
I mean, Louise, if you have music channels on the TV at home, I don't know if you do, but if you're doing a Lady Gaga video comes on, or Britney Spears or a Pussycat Dolls video, do you turn it off? Do you have a problem with your kids watching these kind of things?
Gaga, no, probably not, but Dolls, yes. Just because it's
Why?
so,
What's the difference?
bland. It's just so bland.
Oh, OK, no, but that's about taste. That's about whether you like the music or not, not about the overt sexuality.
It's overtly sexual without having any sort of notion of what they're doing. It feels like they're just kind of
But a 4-year-old doesn't understand that. The 4-year-old just sees the sexual images,
so
and Gaga's images are...
my kid hasn't started watching that stuff yet. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think some of it seems to have an element of sort of knowingness to it. And when you see the Pussycat Dolls, they just seem like Thunderbird puppets to me in sexy dresses. I don't know. It just
there you go.
nothing.
Look, perfectly wholesomely dressed there. Any one of them would make a perfect daughter-in-law. I can imagine.
That they all have to do it. They've all got to outdo each other. It's like who can be the skimpiest. You know, who can get their choo-choo out the most. You know.
I've no idea what trains have got to do with anything of this. Is this, though, just the case of someone who's, quite frankly, old, like Mike Stock, who's had his fun throughout the 80s?
I'll get him in the 80s. And in the article, they put a picture of Kylie with, at her most innocent. And this is the 80s. This is a decade that gave us Frankie as well. And you think that disco stick line is a little bit risque or racy. I mean, there's a lot around.
Listen to the lyrics of Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I mean, look, pop has always been about being sexual and seeing what, and pushing the boundaries. I mean, there was a time when Elvis couldn't be filmed below the waistline because of what he was doing with his hips. I mean, it's not, there's nothing new about this.
Filmed below his chin after he got a bit older. all of his chins. Anyway, so, are you happy to let your kids watch Lady Gaga videos, or do you think that most pop stars' performances these days border on soft porn? Right Stuff at 5t.tv is the place for your emails. Coming up after. Before we move on, let's hear some of your emails about whether today's pop stars are overtly sexualising our kids. Kirsty.
OK, the first email I have is from Dan, and he says, to me, this view that singers and pop stars are too raunchy is very outdated. Music today is not overtly sexual, in my opinion. Gaga's I Want to Take a Ride on Your Disco Stick is to adults a sexual reference, but younger fans won't necessarily understand it.
Exactly.
They might just think it's a disco stick.
There you go.
Andrew is 22 years old. And he says, I personally think many videos, lyrics and other so-called artists are usually far too sexual for young kids. I overheard a child who could not have been older than 8 singing about getting it up, hitting it and so forth. Am I getting old?
I've been talking about tennis. How do you know?
Am I getting old before my time? Or is innocence a thing of the past? I think the innocence of a child is a wonderful thing, and it seems parents aren't willing to preserve it.
Right, nice. Innocence,
and then finally, one from Alex. Mike Stock is either old and forgetful or just an enormous hypocrite. Check out the cover of Stock, Aitken and Waterman produced Bananarama album. Wow, pure raunchiness.
Wow, someone just admitted that on an email, that they own that record? Wow. OK, thanks, Kirsty.